All right. Good afternoon, everybody. What's going on? It's your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect right here on the StreamYard. So if you are on Facebook, you can go ahead and share my video. If you're on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. All right. Please make sure you support the channel. So today's topic, we're gonna deal with Dr. Ernest Jest. Dr. Ernest Jest was a biologist. So we're gonna look into his history, and we're gonna go into his life story and what he did, the things that he accomplished or whatnot. So today is his born day. He was born on this day on 1883. Yeah, on August 14th, 1883. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so right here, this guy name is Dr. Ernest Everett Jest. This is Dr. Ernest Everett Jest. Okay, that's him in the laboratory. So let's go into his life story. So right here, I'm on biography.com. All right, that's him again. And it says Ernest Everett Jest was an African American biologist and educator best known for his pioneering work in the physiology of development, especially in fertilization. All right. Who was Ernest Everett Jest? Ernest Everett Jest was an African American biologist and educator who pioneered in many areas of physiology of development, including fertilization, experimental parthenogenesis, hydration, cell division, dehydration in living cells, and ultraviolet carcinogenic radiation effects on cells. Jest's legacy of accomplishment followed him long after his death on October 27th of 1941. Now, Jest was born on August 14th of 1883 in Charleston, South Carolina, to Charles Frazier and Mary Matthew Jest. Known as an intelligent and inquisitive student, Jest studied at Kimball Union Academy in New Hampshire before enrolling at Dartmouth College. And as you can see, it goes on down to say it was during his university years that Jest discovered an interest in biology after reading a paper on fertilization and egg development. This bright young man earned the highest grades in Greek during his freshman year and was selected as a Rufus Coates Scholar for 2 years. He graduated as the sole magna cum laude student in 1907, also receiving honors in botany, sociology, and history. So far, Ernest Jest took up a lot of courses, right? He took up 3 courses or 3 majors. And not only that, he had a fascination with learning about fertilization and eggs. So we're going to go further down into detail, find that out. So that's what got him into studying biology. It says, Carissa says, Jest's first job out of college was as a teacher and researcher at the traditionally all-black Howard University. Later in 1909, he worked in research at Woods Hole Marine Biological Laboratory in Massachusetts. Jest furthered his education by obtaining a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the University of Chicago, where he studied experimental embryology and graduate magna cum laude. Okay. Jess pioneered many areas on the physiology of development, including fertilization, experimental parthenogenesis, etc. We read that part. Okay. Well, I read that part. Excuse me. Jess also served as editor of three scholarly periodicals, and in 1915 won the NAACP first Spargan Medal for outstanding achievement by a Black American. From 1920, right, to 1931, he was a Julius Rosenwald Fellow in Biology of the National Research Council, a position that provided him the chance to work in Europe when racial discrimination hindered his opportunities in the United States. During this time, Jess penned many research papers, including the 1924 publication General Cytology, which he co-authored with respected scientists from Princeton University, the University of Chicago, the National Academy of Sciences, and the Marine Biological Laboratory. Okay. And it goes on to say, held in high esteem within his field, notable Black scientist Charles Drew called Jess a biologist of unusual skill and the greatest of our original thinkers in the field. So he had the opportunity to travel to places in Europe. He had received his doctoral degree, and he was able to teach at Howard University, right? Yep. So he had a degree of philosophy. So Jess was at his prime. I mean, as prime, especially when it came to biology and studying the embryo. So now the question is, why was he so interested in learning about embryos development or embryology? So for those who don't know what embryology is the study of the embryos, which means like the beginning stage of babies. Yeah, so that's what embryology deals with. Okay, so let's go on by his personal life. Jess married high school teacher Ethel Highwarden on June 26th of 1912, and together they had three children, Margaret Highwarden and Maribo, before divorcing in 1939. The same year, Jess married Hedwig Schwenzler, a philosophy student he met in Berlin. In 1940, German Nazi imprisoned Jess in a camp, but with the help of his wife's father, he was released. After making their way out of France, the couple gave birth to daughter Elizabeth. And Ernest Jess died of pancreatic cancer in Washington, D.C. on October the 27th of 1941. He is buried at the Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in Suitland, Maryland. So let's go furthermore into detail about his research. Okay. So right here, I'm on an article, right? See if I can zoom that in. I'm trying to see if I can zoom. Okay, here we go, right here. All right. Zoom in a little bit more. Zoom that out. All right. So I'm on an article, and it's called Developmental Biology. And it's titled Ernest Everett Jess, an early ecological developmental biologist. These are the names W. Malcolm Barnes and William R. Eckberg. All right. And that's the abstract. Let's see. Let's read what the abstract say. Ecological development biology involves the study of development in its natural environment context as opposed to a laboratory setting. Ernest E. Jess was an early 20th century African-American embryologist who devoted his career to studying the early development of marine introvert uh, invertebrates in the United States and abroad. Through a detailed study of the fertilization process, he came to see the cells cortex as playing a central role in development, inheritance, and evolution. This paper, after presenting some of Jess' scientific and philosophical contribution, argues that Jess was eco-developed biologist. Three lines of evidence are given. First, Jess believed that the intimate knowledge of the natural history of the marine animal under study, hence, the natural setting in which fertilization occurred was essential. Second, he stressed the importance of the egg's normality, how well its condition in the laboratory correspond to the natural fertilizable state. Finally, Jess was an organist, believed that organisms are a holistic system with emerged properties that arise from their organization and complexity. Although other scientists may stand out more clearly as founding architects of eco-develop, E. Jess, with his unwavering insistence on the normality and holistic integrity of the egg cell, was one of its purest adherents. Okay, so let's trying to say how you do this. All right, so that's a little abstract about what Ernest just did. Basically, he studied like the animal evolution pretty much, and he studied how the embryo developed and like what, from the beginning stage, etc. So um let's look further down. Okay. Okay, so let's look further down to where. Okay, so right here under biological and philosophical landscape, it goes on to say, the world of biology that E. Jess entered when he started his research career at Woods Hole was, as Scott Gilbert described, a house divided. In 1911, Thomas Hunt Morgan, an embryologist who previously had forcefully argued for the cytoplasmic model of development and inheritance, began to lay the foundation for what later would become the gene theory, which held that nuclear chromosomes contain the units of heredity in a linear array. Morgan's study on the X chromosome of Trosophia had shown that genes were physically located within chromosome in the nucleus. By the time Morgan's book, The Theory of the Gene, was published in 1926, he had changed his earlier holistic view of inheritance and was arguing forcefully for a nucleocentric view by distinguishing the transmission of genetic traits from the expression of those traits, and by locating genes in the nucleus. Morgan was able to shift attention away from the cytoplasmic realm of the phenotype to that of the nuclear genotype. All right. But let's see what did Jess do? Okay. So Jess wrote more than 70 scientific articles over 30 years span from 1911 to 1941. List some of the mainstream journals in which Jess published. his words. He authored two books, Basic Methods for Experiments on Eggs of Marine Animals and the Biology of the Cell Surface. Both published in 1939. He just began his career, embryology in the United States was in the state of flux. The prominent practitioners had all been trained to be observer of development, but they were all moving towards experimentalists. At Woods Hole, the experimentalists were called worm slicers, and the naturalists were called bug hunters. Ironically, now that nearly all research in Woodhull is experimental, the townspeople call all scientists bug hunters. Just straddle this divide in an important way, as well as will be shown below. Although clearly an experimentalist, he always paid close attention to the embryo's environment. So, so far, um, in order to study the embryo, you have to go through the experimental process, which means that you have to do the field research, and that's something that just did. Basically, he took the risk of doing field research into studying about the embryos, particularly animals, right? Marine animals at that. Then it goes down further to say that two of Jeff's earliest studies were concerned with the breeding habits of the marine annelids, Nereis labata and P. megalopes at Woodholes. It is worth looking in some depth of the first study, the one on N. labata, because it demonstrates just growing awareness of the importance of environmental factors, season phase of the moon, and time of the day in this case. It also highlights Jeff's naturalist tendencies and communicates his fascination with the animal he was observing. All right, so, and it goes in detail right here. Let's see, pull it up. All right, so it says the animal may be taken after sunset on certain nights. In general, during the dark of the moon in the months of June, July, August, and September, they appear swimming near the surface of the water very soon after sunset and may be attracted by the light of the lantern and readily caught with a small handed net. The swarming use yeah the swarming usually begin with the appearance of a few males readily distinguished by their bright red anterior segments and white sexual segments, darting rapidly through the water in curved paths in and out of the circle of light cast by the lantern. The much larger females then begin to appear, usually a smaller number swimming uh, laboriously through the water. Both sexes rapidly increase in numbers during the next 15 minutes, and in case of a large swarm, there may be hundreds of males in sight at one time, though the number of females to be seen at one time rarely exceed 10 or a dozen. In about 45 minutes, the numbers begin to decrease. In an hour and a half, all have disappeared for the night. So, again, he was doing field research and he was out there keeping counts of the animals that he was observing. Obviously, it seemed like it was it sounded like he was observing animals in the waters or in the sea somewhere. So he would sit there day by day, night by night, and watch these animals, right, and keeping track of what they was doing and the time. So that takes a lot of patience to do. If you out there doing that type of research, especially in the biology field, you really have to sit back and just closely analyze things. But let's continue on. Then it goes on to say, In the second equally fascinating study, he described the egg-laying ritual of P. megalopes. With these two examples, we see that Jess was becoming intimately familiar with the breeding behavior of the animals who eggs he studied. Using a light microscope, the most advanced imaging technology available to him, Jess carefully followed events occurring in the egg cells during fertilization. The result of this attention to detail was that he was able to identify very precise changes in egg structure. One of his more innovative studies was one in which he exposed, oh, I do not know how to say this word right here, and I'm not gonna say it. It starts with an E. What's it? Ichinar. This word is complicated, so I'm gonna skip that word. Where he was studying the eggs to dilute seawater at various precisely timed intervals after insemination, and measured the position of membranes of separation relative to the point of sperm egg fusion and the time it took for each egg to rupture at this point or at this position. Although this might seem like a very crude experiment, just care and precision allow him to exploit it to undercover the fact that the instability of the zygote surface moves in a wave from the point of the sperm entry to the opposite side. Thus, Jess can be credited with presenting the first evidence that the envelope forms as a result of a wave of structural change at the edge surface. We now know that this wave of instability is the same as the wave of cortical granule esophysis that forms the fertilization envelope. As early as 1919, Jess reported that polyspermy is blocked at the beginning of the cultural reaction. In the biology of the cell surface, he described the first 2 minutes of the fertilization process in the neurosis and Arbicea. And so he wrote under here, he said, under the impact of the spermatization, the egg surface first gives way and then rebounds. The egg membrane moves in and out beneath the actively moving spermalization for a second or two. Then suddenly the spermalization becomes motionless with its tip buried in a slight indentation of the egg surface, at which point the ectoplasm develops a cloudy appearance. This turbidity spreads from here so that the whole ectoplasm is cloudy. Now, like a flash, beginning at the point of sperm attachment, a wave sweeps over the surface of the egg, clearing up the ectoplasm as it passes. 25 seconds after insemination, a comb of the ectoplasm protrudes and encloses the sperm head. This is suddenly pulled into the comb progressively. From this point, the membrane separates in a waveform from the surface of the egg. 30 seconds after insemination, the membrane is separate from the egg by a narrow perivitine space. The vitelline membrane becomes equidistant from the egg, and is at its greatest with 120 seconds after insemination. All right. Okay, so with that being said, basically that was his scientific research. He was basically just studying how the egg and sperm combine together and how they formulate and things of that nature. So So yeah, if you want to check out more about this article, you can go ahead and do so. So this is the name of the article right here. Ernest Everett, Jess, and early ecological development biologist. That's his information. See right there, that's the website. You can go on. So developmental biology, etc. All right, it was written back in 2006. So yeah. Let's check out some more source. Hold on. Ooh. Okay. I have done short videos as well. You just got, if you go look into my archives, you'll check it out. They have done some short videos. Yeah, so but particularly the reason why some of these videos or most of my videos are long because I am showing like sources of information, where people can literary source. That's basically what I do. So, I show a lot of literary sources on here, which is why my video tends to be very long. So yeah. Um so anyways, so let's look up this article right here. Ouch, my leg is killing me. Hold on, you guys. Dang, my leg is killing me. All right. So let's look up this article right here called the Ernest Everett Jazz. Johans was it Hoferter and the origins of a certain concept in embryo morphogenesis. All right. So here it is. It was written by W. Malcolm Barnes. It gives out a little summary about his life up here in this article. Oh, oh my goodness. Okay, so let's read the introduction real quick. So it says, for almost 40 years after the end of World War II, the work of E.E. Jess, an African-American embryologist who is best known for his discovery of the wave of negativity that sweeps over the egg upon fertilization, lay buried in the scientific literature. Then in 1983, on the 100th anniversary of Jess' birth, MIT historian Kenneth Manning published a prize-winning biography of 1983 that made accessible the life and work of Jess, engendering a level of interesting not evident before. Gloat favorably reviewed Manning's book and soon afterward wrote a column in Natural History about Jess' scientific work. That was in 1985. Developmental biologist Scott Gilbert authored a book chapter in 1988 comparing and contrasting Jess and Richard Goldschmidt, and he cited Jess' discovery of the fast and slow blocks to polyspermy in his well-known textbook of developmental biology, now in its 8th edition, Gilbert 2006. So Barnes and Eckberg recently highlighted Jess' emphasis on the environmental context of development, the Dictionary of Scientific Biology, an important reference material for libraries. Now has an entry on Jess, whereas previously there was no entry. Finally, at least 2 universities have hosted symposia honoring Jess and his work. The Medical University of South Carolina has held a symposium in Jess' honor each spring since 2001, and in November 2008, a symposium honoring Jess was held on the campus of Howard University. These activities indicate a renewed interest in Jess and his work. Nonetheless, Jess' contribution have not been fully appreciated. Of course, of course. This paper this paper, after briefly giving some yeah, biographical highlights and presenting some of just better known experiments, will argue that his work and ideas strongly influenced the pioneering embryologist Johannes Hopfutter. Specifically, it will argue that Jess experiments demonstrating development stage was it yeah developmental stage specific changes in the uh adhesiveness of the blastomer, blastomers of cleavage embryos help lay the foundation for Hofeler's concept of tissue affinity and amphibian embryo morphogenesis, and Jess' notion of the intrinsic irritability of the egg cell, which is evident during experimental parthenogenesis, strongly informed Holtzapffer's concept of the non-specific induction of neutralization in amphibian gastrula ectoderm explants. So let's see what else they talking about right here. So we're gonna skip all the way down. Let's look down either further. What else he done? Mm. All right, so under here we're gonna look real quick because there's a lot of information on here. So real quick, what it says: just philosophical indication or organism. Jess' writings revealed that he embraced the philosophy of organism or materialistic holism, which posited that cells and organisms are complex wholes that are inherently greater than the sum of their parts. The properties of any level of organization depend on the properties of the parts of the level below, as well as the properties of the whole into which they are integrated. Properties emerge out of the organizational complexity of the system. Stephen Jay Gould described this philosophy as the middle position, lying it as it does between vitalism on the one hand and mechanism on the other. The middle position holds that life, as a result of its structural and functional complexity, cannot be taken apart into its chemical constituents and explained in it's entirely by physical and chemical laws working at the molecular level. Life must be studied at its own level. Its complexity must be tackled directly, not dissolved into components, for the interaction of these components is primary and reducible. All right. Gold conclude that Jess was an organist or organist, and this conclusion is born out of in Jess' writings. Um, all of which shows that Jess believed that life arises out of the complexity and structural integrity of living system. In the biology of the cell surface, he wrote, life is the harmonious communion of events, the reluctant of the communion of structures and reaction. Moreover, we scientists overlook the organodynamics of protoplasm. Its power to organize itself. Living substance is such because it possesses this organization, something more than the sum of its minutest part. This philosophical view placed just squarely in the company of other classical embryologists of his time. However, unlike others, he was willing to publicly take on such giants as Thomas Hunt Morgan, the Nobel laureate who proposed that genes on chromosome are the units of inheritance in his defense of the cell's holistic integrity. At the 1935 American Society of Zoologists meeting in Princeton, New Jersey, for example, Jess challenged Morgan and presented his own clever but ultimately incorrect cytoplasm center theory of how differentiation occurred during development. His theory of genetic restriction stated that all the differences and differentiation that appear during development rest upon a cytoplasmic reaction. These are made possible through removal of obstacles by nuclei, hence by chromosome and genes. The nuclei, by removal of substance, release the activity of the cytoplasm in one direction. And that was written by Jess in 1939. Unfortunately, if Morgan was too nucleocentric, Jess was even more dramatically off the mark. Nonetheless, Jess' explanation, though incorrect, revealed a pronounced egalitarian and decentralized view of the cell. This view certainly is becoming more common today with the rise of epigenetics. ah, so wait a minute. So it's funny. They say that his views was incorrect at that time, but now they're saying that his views is to become more common because of the epigenetics. That's interesting enough. So let's sum this all up, right? Dr. Ernest E. Jess was a person that was studying basically evolution. So let's put it all together. He studied evolution through understanding the embryos and the sperm and the fertilization process, which made him an embryologist, right? So he pretty much confirmed evolution. So for all the people that don't believe that evolution is real and there's no such thing as evolution and yada 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 and all that other stuff, well, you might want to study Ernest Everett Jess, because he studied evolution. That's what he was basically studying on. So when he was studying about the embryos and the sperms and fertilization with animals, like sea animals, as example. So when they talk about the marines, they're talking about the sea, basically. So when he was studying the sea animals, spending all that time, all day, all night, taking notes and looking at, dissecting the cells and all that good stuff that he was doing, right? He was studying how the formation was happening and what was taking place, how the sperm came in and how it detached itself and all of that. So he understood evolution and he confirmed that to be real. So let's go back and let's read that again, where he made the statement real quick. What did he say? What did he say right here? He said according in the biology of the cell surface, he wrote, life is harmonious communion of events, the resulting of the communion of structure and reaction. Life is the harmonious communion of events, the resulting of the communion and structure and reaction. So he's showing you how the process of evolution works. It works harmoniously, right? And it brings about structures and reaction. And then what else did he say? We scientists overlook the organodynamics of protoplasm, its powers to organize itself. Living substance is such because it possesses this organization, something more than some of its minutest parts. And then let's go down. Wait a minute. Let's go back down as a review. What did they say? Now, when he challenged Thomas Morgan about his proposal on chromosomes and genes, right? And inheritance. What did he say right here? It says, and okay, Jess challenged Morgan and presented his own clever but ultimately incorrect cytoplasma center theory of how differentiation occurs during development. And his theory of genetic restriction states that all differences or differentiation that appears during development rests upon cytoplasmic reaction. These are made possible through removal of obstacles by nuclei, hence by chromosome and genes. The nuclei, by removal of substance, release the activity of cytoplasm in one direction. Ultimately, if Morgan was too nucleocentric, Jess was even more dramatically off the mark. Nonetheless, Jess' explanation, though incorrect, revealed a pronounced egalitarian and decentralized view of the cell. This view certainly is becoming more common with the rise of epigenetics. So, if it was incorrect, then why did it become more common with the rise of epigenetics? So, because if we know what epigenetics is, let's go look that up real quick. Epigenetics. Okay. So now the term epigenetic in biology, epigenetic is the study of heritable phenotype changes that do not involve alteration in the DNA sequence. All right, the Greek prefix epi means over, outside, or around. And epigenetics implies features that are on top of or in addition to the traditional genetic basis for inheritance. Epigenetics often involve changes that affect gene activity and expression, but the term can also be used to describe any inheritable phenotypic change. Such effects on cellular and physiological phenotypic traits may result from external or environmental factors, right? Or be part of normal development. The standard definition of epigenetics requires these alteration to be heritable in progeny of either cells or organism. So basically, not only was he studying biology, he was studying the earliest form of epigenetics. But see, they didn't discover that at that time period because epigenetic was not the term then. So it's more like a recent term that was discovered around 1980-ish, somewhere like that, or 1970, I believe. But that's what he was studying. He was not only studying evolution, but he was studying the epigenetic, the gene expression, right? The changes that was taking place as far as the physical characteristic of an animal. But anyways, now the epigenetics that people normally speak of as far as like behavior patterns is concerned, that is nurture or that is passed on down to the genes, such as trauma and all that, is transgenerational epigenetics. So you hear a lot about transgenerational epigenetics because of the traumatic experience or certain type of behavior patterns, characteristics, things like that. So yeah, that's something totally different. But yes, going back to Dr. Jess, he was studying about epigenetics and he was studying evolution and that combination, right? Before there was a term epigenetics, that's what he was studying, and that's what he was describing when he was challenging Thomas Morgan on his concept about genes. And I gotta go back in. Yeah, when he was challenging Thomas Morgan about the concept of genes and chromosomes and inheritance. So that's what he was giving a description of. but they thought that he was being incorrect. Obviously, they come to find out that the view is very common today because of the study of epigenetics. So Jess' views about cells and genes and inheritance is the common study of epigenetics. Anyways, with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. So if you want to look up more information about this article right here, it's called the Ernest Everett Jess Johannes Holtifer and the origin of certain concept in embryo morphogenesis. You can look that up yourself right here. The name of the article is Molecular Reproduction and Development. This was written in 2009. The author name is W. Malcolm Barnes. Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, Howard University College of Medicine, Washington District of Columbia. So, all right, so that's the information right there. You can look it up on onlinelibrary.willy.com. All right. Anyways, so that concludes this video. Thank you guys for watching. So with that being said, this your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. And if you guys want to support the channel, please do so. If you are watching from Facebook, you can go ahead and share this channel. If you want to support what I'm doing, as far as like going out and doing this little research and find out information, and you think what I'm doing is very valuable and you want to contribute, you can go ahead and hit that Cash App if you like. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and conclude this video. All right, you guys be safe out there, and please stay motivated, and please be careful. And if you guys think that the COVID-19 is gonna go away anytime soon, you please think again, because we don't know when it's going to slow down. It don't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So COVID look like it ain't going nowhere. So yeah, just please be careful and be safe. All right. And I will reconnect with you guys later. All right then. So with that being said, may peace and power elevation be to all of you. Thank you. Deuces. All right.